Hi there guys, it's Mike from MCQBushcraft here and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to cover clothing, and I've brought with me today the clothing that I wear when I'm out doing bushcraft skills, or maybe I'm out hunting, as you've seen me do many a time on the channel, or maybe I go abroad somewhere and I'm out in open wilderness. Obviously here in the British Isles we get loads of rain. It's a very damp environment in a respect. Not humid, but very cold. The damp really gets into your bones, so it's something that you really have to take into account. We get temperatures in the summer ranging from mid to high 20s, very rarely in the 30s, but it does happen. And in the winter, normally -5, maybe -7. It can go as cold as -15 degrees. That usually happens if I go to the Lake District or even into Scotland and you go up in altitude a little bit and you have a wind chill factor, and that does exacerbate things and makes it feel much colder than it really is. So we're going to have a closer look at each layer, and I'm going to start with what's closest to my body and work my way outward. Let's start with socks, and you can see they're very thin socks. They're not particularly thick at all. My boots offer me the majority of my thermal protection when I'm out, and they protect me from the damp as well. I wear Haglof's high leg leather boots, and I'll go over those in another video, but they're an excellent boot. I've worn them for over a year very frequently and they're still holding up very good, and they're very comfortable with a sock like this. And these are merino wool, and I have many pairs of them, and these are the socks that I wear all year round. I don't wear thick socks at all. They offer me quite a good degree of thermal protection, but also from a hygiene perspective, wool is very good at dealing with odours and bacteria, and generally you'll find that moisture wicks away and evaporates off of wool very quickly because of its water suspension property. It has lots of air pockets in the fibres naturally, so thermally it's very good. It's also very good at drying quickly too. Cotton is a fabric that I rarely ever or never wear outdoors. It's some people call it the death cloth, because as soon as cotton absorbs sweat and moisture, it'll work against you and it'll just freeze you like a refrigerator. It's really not something you should wear at all if you're going out and you're doing anything active. If you're stationary, it's not a problem. Very comfortable fabric. But if you're active, it will get soaked through, and you really want to shed that cotton layer. But I've got on very well with socks like this, and I generally carry one spare pair with me in the bottom of my pack all the time. And when I go out into long trips or I'm camping out, if I'm out for a week, I could carry a couple of spare pairs of socks and rotate them very quickly, and they can even be washed and wrung out and dried by the fire, and they dry very fast. I do have some thicker socks behind me, as you've probably noticed. Very thick 100% wool socks, but these are what I wear in bed. These are actually a part of my sleep system, and when it gets really cold, my sleeping bag then requires some assistance to make it better, and I wear socks like this and they become a part of my sleep system. And I wouldn't carry lots of pairs of these, just one pair, because they're only worn in bed. When it comes to boxer shorts or underwear, I wear these synthetic Wicking boxer shorts. Now first off, these will not be as comfortable or as efficient when dealing with hygiene as merino wool. Merino wool will be better. So if you can afford to get merino wool as your initial layer that's closest to your body, I would strongly advise it, because it will serve you better in the long run. The garments will last longer and they will be better at dealing with your odours and also the elements in terms of warmth and all the rest of it. But it tends to be expensive, merino wool, so initially this sort of equipment can be quite affordable if you're just getting into it and you don't want to shell out loads of money because you're not sure whether you'll like it. You go into any sport shop and you can pick up Wicking underwear like this, even Wicking t-shirts, which I'll show you momentarily, and they are designed to draw the sweat away from your body, the moisture, and then it evaporates away. So they generally dry very quickly if they get wet from sweat on your body. They can be washed as well very easily on the trail and dried via a thermal wall really quickly. But this is generally a polyester and elastane mix to give it flexibility. That's what the elastane does, and most of your wicking material will be a polyester based fabric. So this is the t-shirt that I wear. I always wear a t-shirt quite close to my body. Again, from a hygiene perspective, it's that initial layer that's going to take the most of the brunt from your body. It's far easier to rotate a t-shirt than it is a secondary layer or even a third layer on top of that. This is a British military Wicking t-shirt, same material as the boxer shorts I showed you, a Wicking material designed to take moisture away from your body, and then it can evaporate very quickly. There are other technologies out there now though that have silver woven into the fabric that stop bacteria feasting on the sweat that you produce, producing acids, which is essentially how the odours are produced. So there are clever technologies around, but my advice would be to stick with the merino wool because it is a natural fibre and is a lot better really. So those are the layers that are closest to my body, and they're the layers that are really going to suffer the worst when it comes to hygiene. You'll find that they will have the shortest lifespan out in the field, out in the wilderness, or even out on short stints or camping. They will smell the worst quickest. So I generally carry a spare set of all of this, minimum, at the bottom of my pack, but we'll get into that at the end of the video. I'll show you what I carry. But we're going to move on to base layers now, and base layers come into play when the temperatures start to drop and you need something in between your underwear and your mid layer. So what I've got here is a base layer, and we've got a trouser part, like a pair of long johns, and we've also got a zip up high neck long sleeved top. And I generally wear layers like this when the temperature drops and it starts getting very cool, so having a base layer on just gives you a bit of defence from that cold. It provides you with some good insulation. Base layers are very variable things, and some are referred to as active base layers that are designed for strenuous activity, wicking water away from your body, drying you off, and also cutting down on wind chill. But mine aren't designed for this strictly, they're more for thermal protection. I've worn leggings like this, in fact these exact leggings, when I've done very active things to try them out, and it's very restrictive and I don't like that at all. I'd rather just have my polycotton bushcraft trousers on, and I only generally carry one set of these on me. I sometimes carry two tops, but on the trouser side of things I normally only carry one pair. Another base layer that I have is this rather large one here. This is called the Nookie Iceman, and the Nookie Iceman is a full length base layer. It goes from just below the head all the way down to your feet, and it's designed specifically to go under dry suits. But I use it as a base layer when it's too cold for my sleep system, and this keeps me really warm then. And that, with my thick wool socks and a hat, is a brilliant addition to the sleep system to basically allow you to do very cold conditions. So it's a really good piece of kit. I really like it. It's polyester, synthetic. You've got a lot of pockets at the top here. You've got hand pockets just at the bottom, there and there. And on the feet you have these straps here that wrap around your feet to stop it riding up on you when you're walking. So you can wear it underneath your normal clothing, and if I was sitting at a camp and it was really bitterly cold and windy and I was freezing, I'd put this on, as I have done before, and it basically allows you to stay very, very warm. But I very rarely ever use it. The temperatures really have to warrant taking it, in my opinion, or else it's just taking up too much room. So those are the base layers that I use, and the most common part of the base layer that I use is the top of this base layer here, and I often use that as a mid layer as well. And that's something that you might hear used a lot, a term, a mid layer. What do you use as a mid layer? Well, people use mid layers in all different ways. I mean, mid layers can go over the top of base layers. You can wear a mid layer just as it is, as a garment. You could even wear a mid layer underneath this bush shirt here. I've got a mid layer on underneath this. So you can see this fleece here, this regatta fleece. This is my mid layer that I'm wearing underneath my bush shirt, which is my outer layer. When I went to Sweden, I bought myself a nice mid layer. I bought a 511 fleece, which was going to be a mid layer for me. It elasticated up around the wrists and waist and neck, so it kept the warmth in. That's very good for a mid layer, just what you really want it to do. But unfortunately that fleece lasted all of 4 months. Now it's just fallen to pieces. All of the shoulder padding came off, it all just fell apart. It looks terrible. So that's an expensive fleece to spend your money on for it to fall apart in 4 months. So I wouldn't recommend buying that one. But there are a lot of mid layers out there, and if you're looking for a good mid layer, what I suggest you do is think about how that mid layer will pack down in your backpack, because clothing takes up a lot of space. It's really important but you want it to be as efficient as it possibly can be. So mid layers are something to think about, but try and tie them in with your base layer as well, and that way you're killing two birds with one stone, and it can work in your sleeping bag. I suppose really this shirt could be a mid layer, but I wouldn't technically classify it as one. And this is a Fjällräven bush shirt, and in some climates they're very useful. In my climate, not so much. You will see me wear these in some of the older videos. I actually quite like wearing them in the summer. They're really useful in the summer if you want something that's long sleeved. Maybe the temperatures fluctuate, maybe it could be a bit damp, and an outer layer like this over a Wicking t-shirt could be quite useful for you. But I generally wear these, I look out the window in the morning, what's the weather like? Okay, I might wear this today, but it's not something I'd pack with me, if you understand my logic. We're getting into outer layers now, things that you wear as like your main garment on the outside of your body that get exposed to the elements, and they generally have to be quite tough. I usually opt for wool. Wool is a great fabric, as we've discussed, very good thermally. If it gets wet, it's very good with water, it dries pretty efficiently, and there are synthetic fibres that will outperform it as well these days. But as far as a natural material goes, it's really efficient, and its longevity is brilliant. I find this shirt here to be really efficient. I've had it for a long time, and the company who makes this are called Swan Dry, and they're based in New Zealand, and they do a range of bush shirts. They've been making them for years. They used to do quite a range of colours, not so many anymore, but they still do some good bush shirts, and a lot of them now they treat with a particular type of oil to make it waterproof, so the water just beads off of the shirt. You'll see me wear this almost all year round. It's good in the summer if the temperatures aren't too hot, and it's pretty good in the winter too, especially if it's worn with a good mid layer or base layer to give it some thermal value, because it is a bit open and exposed, and also worn with a large jacket, a waterproof jacket, because it rains here a lot where I am in the British Isles. But a nice shirt. This is a much more heavy duty version of this bush shirt I've got on, and this is a garment again made by Swan Dry. This is their waterproof wool, so it's treated and the rain beads off of it. It does have a saturation point though. Obviously if you're out in torrential rain, this is going to get very heavy and very wet. It will still be warm because it's wool, but it will be very heavy and wet, and obviously it will lose some of its thermal value, so you won't be quite as warm as if it's dry. But it has one pocket. It's just a long smock that goes over your head. It's lined so the itchy wool doesn't come into contact with your body, but that lining actually helps thermally too. You've got a hood and it laces up. You've seen me wear this in a range of videos, mainly when I'm out hunting. If I go out hunting and it's a really cold day and it's a bit damp and the rain is on and off, because sometimes it rains and then it stops, rains and then it stops, something like this is perfect. You don't get wet because the water beads off of it, and you stay warm. And because it goes over your kidneys and your waistline and comes down to your thighs are pretty big muscles in your body, and they emit a lot of heat. So keeping them warm with something long like this is actually really beneficial, and you really do notice it. And you can put a belt around it too and hang your knife and gear on it as well. So this is a really nice garment. I like this one, but the only disadvantage is it's huge and it does not pack down small. Let's briefly move on to trousers. I don't have different pairs of trousers, I just really wear one pair, and that's the Fjällräven Vida Pros, and that's the only trouser I've really been wearing for a long time. A good trouser, it's a poly cotton, so it's about 80% polyester, 20% cotton. There are a lot of poly cotton trousers around. They generally come with a lovely waxed coating on them when you buy them, and they're really starchy and stiff, and when you go out in a bit of rain you'll see it beading on the surface of your trousers, and you'll know that they're keeping you dry. What I'd say is hold off washing them for as long as you can. Just sponge them down if they get a bit muddy. Don't just chuck them in a washing machine, because you'll lose that waxing very quickly. The way to put it back more efficiently would be to buy their wax block, or to be honest, you just make it. Just get some beeswax and some candles, make your own wax, make a block of it, rub it in everywhere as much as you can, and put as much on as you think you'll need. If you're in a very damp environment, you can go heavy on it. If it's nice and dry and warm and humid, you don't want so much of it at all, especially if it's humid. because it'll make you sweat a lot and you'll be very uncomfortable. But once you've done that, you can put it in a tumble dryer and leave it in a tumble dryer on a fairly low heat, and what happens is it melts the wax and warms it up, and it spreads through the fabric, and when you take them out they'll be fairly close to what they're like off the shelf. But they're great trousers, they're hard wearing, they dry really fast, and that's the reason I like them, because they dry quickly. They've got a lot of pockets, as you can see on the side, and one thing I definitely always use with them is knee pads. You can see in the trouser there you have a pocket under there, double layered, because your knees get a beating when you're out all the time, especially on cold ground and damp ground. It really gets into your bones. It'll do you damage later on in life, and you need to protect yourself. One thing I really like about these trousers as well is they fasten up round the ankle, meaning I can wear them high on my boot so they don't get saturated in damp grass. So I like these trousers, they're solid. I know Fjallraven do a whole range of trousers with elastic and all kinds of stuff. I'm just not interested in that. I'd rather it be hard wearing. I very rarely ever wear waterproof trousers, but sometimes in this country the rain is torrential, and in certain parts of the country it's much heavier than others. So if you, for example, went to Dartmoor, or if you went into the Lake District, it rains there quite a lot, and it can be very heavy and rain for a long time. So just going there thinking I don't need waterproof trousers can be a bad idea, because if you're out in the woods or in the wilderness for day after day after day after day, there becomes a saturation point where your trousers, despite being able to dry quickly and fend off a bit of moisture, will be soaked, and you won't be able to dry them, because in soaking wet weather that's continuous, it's better to just keep your clothes as dry as you can rather than just get them soaked and try and dry them by a fire. When you're drying your clothes by a fire because they're soaked, something went wrong. That's generally what that means. It means something went wrong. So try and keep them dry is the key. If I was going somewhere and I suspected the rain would be tremendously heavy, I would not just rely on my long smock there to protect me, because that only goes just above my knee. The rest of my leg can potentially get soaked, especially if you leave the woodland and you're traipsing through long grass, or you're walking and you're out collecting materials for a long time. You're just getting exposed to rain constantly, and it becomes really uncomfortable. So I wear these cheap and expensive waterproof trousers. I don't even know who makes them. Let's have a look. Sprayway, that's who makes them. And they're just elasticated. They go over the top of my Fjallravens. They unzip on the leg as well, like that, so they can go over boots. And they pack down really, really small. They can crush up just like that and go into the bottom of a backpack, or you can fold them, make them as flat as possible, so packing space is more efficient. So if I do have to take waterproof trousers, then I generally just pack something like this, and I actually really like these as well. They're very efficient. My main jacket that I wear is this Ridgeline Bushmaster smock, and this is the jacket just here. You've seen me wear this in lots and lots of different videos. I had it in Sweden as my main garment. I wear it when I go out hunting quite a lot. I wear it when I go out and do camping. It's a great piece of equipment, really. And Ridgeline make a lot of different garments. They make loads of different things. Their fleeces are very efficient as well. They do some really good waterproof fleeces and mid layers. If you want to get yourself a good fleece, you can have a look at some of their stuff that they do. But this is very similar to an older product that they did called the Monsoon, which was a very popular jacket. The only complaints I ever had about the Monsoon were its breathability. If you did anything active in it for any long period of time, you get very warm, and the sweat would literally be running along the inside of the jacket. And this is where this jacket differs quite a lot from the Monsoon. It has the same waterproof rating of 10,000, but a breathability rating of 10,000 as well. So it's designed for the heaviest of downpours, but it has a very, very high breathability rating as well. So it's good for active conditions too. It's not padded, it just has a wicking layer on the inside here to keep the waterproof material away from your body, but other than that, it packs down really small, and it can be compressed up and put into a pack if not needed and carried as part of your kit. especially if you don't want to carry waterproof trousers because you're not expecting downpours, just rain and wind. Something like this is ideal. It's got toggles around the waist so you can draw it in close to your waist. It's got hand warming pockets with waterproof zips just at the base of the jacket. And you also have a zip up the side as well, which helps with manoeuvrability. You can zip it down or unzip it if you're moving your legs a lot. We've got a large zip pocket on the chest, useful for maps or even binoculars, quite easy to access to. We've got a storm flap here that poppers open, YKK zippers. You can cool down a bit as well under the arm with a mesh that you can unzip. And if we turn this over, you can see underneath these poppers we have a hood, and the hood can just come out of here and go over your head, and it has a wire frame in it so you can shape it to make the peak a suitable shape to drip the rain off of. Also has toggles as well so you can draw it in. And a nice material on the inside that keeps you nice and dry and wicks the moisture away from your body, also keeps moisture off of you. One feature I quite like is the neoprene cuffs on the inside. These make it really comfortable and it fends out the weather as well, nice and warm. And you have an outer cuff too that you can do up even tighter. I really like this jacket, I've got on with it very well, been very impressed. Expensive jacket, cost me a lot of money. Bought it as a treat to myself after my wedding before Sweden. I wanted a decent jacket to take out there, and I've given it a run for its money, and I'm really happy with it. It's really good. Machine washable too. So that's all of the main clothing that I wear. But what about extremities? Extremities are things like your head, your neck, your hands and your feet. Boots I'll cover in another video, as I've said. But in terms of the head, I've got a woolly hat on. This is a Fjällräven woolly hat. I wouldn't really say you have to get Fjällräven, you can get any woolly hat. But a good woolly hat will stand you in good stead. Especially in my part of the world, you need a woolly hat almost all year round. Even though you won't wear it in the summer, when you go out and you camp at night, sometimes it can cool off, and a woolly hat will really help keep your body temperature up. My neck, sometimes you'll see me with a buff. This is a fleece lined buff. And I generally don't carry this if I'm backpacking or going out into the wilderness in another part of the world, for example. It would be something that I just wear when I look out the window at the start of the day. Maybe if I go out hunting or something like that, I will wear a fleece lined buff because they're really comfortable. Even though it doubles up as a hat, if it's cold, generally you need both, so carrying two buffs wouldn't really work for me. But one thing I do carry is my Shemagh. Quite a big piece of fabric, very multifunctional. I've covered this in my kit video. Good as a towel, goes with hygiene quite well. It absorbs water very nicely and dries very quick too, and it can be hung up, and it's nice and thin as well, so the air can cut through it and dry it off. But I would say that this would be more multifunctional than the buff. Obviously it can be used as a scarf and many other things as well, so I always carry one of these. They're really useful. In terms of gloves, I use sealskin gloves, and sealskins are really comfortable. I find them to be a very effective glove. I've used the 511 flight gloves, I've also used the mechanic gloves. Both have good dexterity, but when it comes to water, they absorb water and your hands start to get cold. So sealskins for me have been an excellent glove so far, and I'd highly recommend them. I have my backpack next to me, and if we open up the pack, I'll show you what I carry. I have a mesh sack, a rectangle shaped mesh sack like this, and it's got a drawstring on the end. And I always carry minimum, this is minimum, one spare set of underwear, which consists of socks, 100% wool socks, underwear, boxer shorts, a t-shirt, and I always carry one spare mid-layer or base layer top. Very rarely the trousers, because as I say, they're super restricting and I don't really like them, and it's really about the core. And that's what I carry. My hat, my Shemagh or scarf, and my gloves are also always carried in my pack, but they're generally in a different place. My hat's usually in my pocket, my gloves are in my pocket, my scarf is in a slightly different place, but these are always packed right at the bottom of my pack. And I keep them in this sack here, and I can actually fill this up with another set as well, so I can have 2 or 3 sets of underwear, 2 or 3 sets of t-shirts, 2 or 3 sets of socks, and I always just carry one mid layer. just like that at the top there. And that's usually how I carry my clothing, and I compress this down, put it right at the bottom of my backpack. But obviously it could get wet. If I was on a canoe or something and I fell in, this would get soaked. So at the bottom of my pack, it's not always in use, but it's always at the base of the pack. I have a 45 litre Ortlieb dry bag. For example, if I'm in an environment that's super damp or it's really raining heavily and I'm just worried about my clothes maybe picking up a bit of moisture, they'll be in the dry bag along with my sleep gear, and then that will be compressed down, and any food and pots and pans will just go on the outside of the dry bag, because generally I don't mind too much if certain things get wet because they're usually in packets. So that's how I carry my spare clothing, and as I say, it's always at the bottom of my backpack. Even if I go out for a day, I usually have one spare set, just to get used to the weight. It's not that I will necessarily need it, I just like to carry what I would normally carry realistically, because for me it's good exercise, it trains you up a bit to get used to weight. When you actually get out there and you do a trek, you're not suddenly putting this pack on thinking, oh my god, this weighs a lot, I don't think I'm going to be able to do these 5 or 6 miles or however far you've got to hike. So I hope this video has been useful for you guys. Clothing really is very important. Not only does it protect you from the elements, it's your first line of defence, but it gives you confidence, and that's a really important thing. If you have good gear that you rely on, you can trust, and that you can put on, and you've got a system that works and all these layers can be put on, you can carry spare equipment in your pack, then you can go out whatever the weather. Depending on where you live and how you've prepared, you can go out whatever the weather and feel confident and be protected from the elements, and then you can enjoy the outdoors all year round instead of just waiting for good days. So for me, clothing's really important. You can see that some of this clothing is expensive, and it's taken me a long time to get some of this gear. I know people will probably say in the comments section I've been given it all and I'm sponsored, I'm endorsing it and I'm selling it all to you, but that's not the truth. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I was sponsored very briefly by Fjäraven when I was in Sweden, and they gave me a pair of trousers and a shirt, but even that fell through, and you know, there were some issues with that, and then it all sort of became a little bit complicated. So the reality is a lot of this stuff I buy with my own money. Swandry were kind enough to send me this for free, this bush shirt, this long smock, and I'm really grateful for that because I've always wanted one. And if I was going to go out into the wilderness and live feral for a while, this is what I would pick. And mainly just because it's going to give me a lot of different things, a lot of different options, and it's really robust. I've torn it through brambles, walked through bushes with it. You know, this place is riddled with brambles, you can't help but get torn apart by them, and this thing just seems to just keep going. And it's been great in heavy rain too, and it's warm, you could sleep in it, so you're going to get a lot out of it, and it will probably last for years and years and years because it's a natural fibre and it's tightly woven. So clothing's super important. I wouldn't just go cheap and buy things that are going to fall apart. You might as well buy something good once and then have it forever, rather than buy lots of multitudes of cheap stuff. Like this stuff here, this is cheap and it won't last very long, and when you dry it and you wring it out, you hear it all cracking and tearing, and this sort of fabric does not like being wrung out. Some does, some doesn't, you just have to gauge it. But if you bought merino wool, it would last a lot longer and be better, even though the initial cost is more. So clothing shouldn't be overlooked, and I hope this video's helped you out. This is just the stuff I wear. You might live in a different part of the world. If you've watched my channel for a while, you'll see me out in a range of weathers, and you can gauge that based upon what you've seen. So I hope this video's helped out. Thanks again for watching, guys, really appreciate it. See you very soon in another video. Take care.